I'm Camille Alarcon, publisher of The Source, Umbrella's industry guide and prospecting tool. Firstly, we have John Broome, Marketing Director of Kellogg's Australia and New Zealand. John has over 25 years of brand marketing experience, having worked for a number of leading FMCG companies, including Reckitt Benckiser and Nestle. He's worked across Europe, the UK, Canada, and the US. And next in we have Matt Brune, Marketing and Innovation Director at Diageo. Matt started his career at Imperial Tobacco and has also previously worked at Kellogg's. And in 2004, he joined Diageo, working across Asia Pac. And in Australia, he spearheaded the relaunch of Bundaberg Rum, receiving a lot of global advertising recognition, including a creative effectiveness line at Cannes last year. And next to Matt, we have Michael Edmonds, GM of Global Marketing for Meat and Livestock Australia. Michael spent much of his career working for consumer goods companies, including GM of Sales and Marketing for Simplot Australia's Top Cut Foods business. He's also worked for Foster's Australia and Mars Incorporated. And last but not least, we have Ken Hefferman, Head of Brand and Advertising at Qantas. Kent is responsible for global brand management, brand design, and advertising. And prior to Qantas, he worked at Telstra for 11 years in various senior roles, including Director of Sales and Marketing for Big Pond, growing the business from 800 million to 3 billion in just 4 years. So welcome to our panelists. Tell us a bit about what you actually do. Talk us through a week in the working life of a Kellogg's marketing director.
This is a question that my wife often asks me. Anyway. Look, I think I don't want to bore you with what a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, or even Saturday or whatever looks like. I guess there's four key themes that I work to, as a marketing director. First, and I guess it's this in the order of priority, and we can debate what the right order is. But for me, number one is people, because when you're in a leadership position, any leadership position, and absolutely vital when you're leading a team of 35. Is, do you have the right people? Are they engaged? Are they all pulling in the right direction? So in any 1 week, I reckon I'm spending, was probably, 30% of my time, 35% of my time, on people, which is quite surprising to a lot of folks. Secondly, this is vitally important, is the number. Are we delivering the number? And there's obviously a series of meetings, particularly at the beginning of the week, around making sure we're delivering that number. And I thank Euro RSCG, if anyone's in the audience from there today, for a mantra that I live by, which is sales today, brands forever, because literally the latter does not exist without the former. The third piece I would say is around ideas. Kellogg is an ideas-driven business. And I'll give you an example of something uniquely Kellogg, which I found very, very strange when I first came in. But when I got the brief from the global CMO over in the USA, he talked to me about a concept called Copy Day. And he explained that this was a day when the marketing team spend their time in the agency, in this case JWT, and maybe you might remember this, I don't know, mate. But
I do.
You do?
It was a painful experience as a brand manager.
But it's an interesting idea. First impressions is it something out of Mad Men? But it's actually really good because it gets the marketing director and the marketing leaders in a room with all the agency partners, not just JWT. And given that we're activating across maybe 10 brands at any one time, we're going through the stuff, the churn of making sure that that's happening, and the marketing director is there in the conversation, which cuts out a lot of the crap that you otherwise get when it just goes to, say, the brand manager and the marketing manager. Then you have to go and find time to go and speak to the marketing director. Then they have to go back to the agency. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So it's a very, very efficient way, and I think differentiates Kellogg a little bit from other organisations. Last but not least, innovation. Typically in FMCG, innovation is something the customer wants to see, and something that does drive tangible growth on the business. So I think, if my copy day is Wednesday, and I've just spent most of the day at JWT down there on Pitt Street, then you can imagine the number is being focused around Monday, and then the other two subjects picked up all around it.
I don't know, it's slightly different to John's, but we don't have copy day. Copy day is epic. And as a brand manager working at Kellogg's, it used to freak the crap out of me, but because you used to have to rock up and present to the marketing director your scripts and stuff, so it always created some nice focus. But Diageo has a it's a global business, right? But
Yeah.
each of our countries, we've got 21 kind of major business units, of which Australia is the 7th biggest kind of entity. They're independent P&Ls. So when you think of marketing directors, you often think of people who make advertising and do that sort of stuff, but not really in our world. I mean, our marketing group's 64, 5, give or take, on any given day, depending who's rocking in, and a good double that, including agency partners. So you got a big team. I spend most of my time on business, on the actual running of the business day to day. And you know, my belief is marketing directors are your GM number 2, because you don't want to trust your CFO, your supply director, or your commercial director to be setting business strategy and kind of forward-proofing the business. So I'd spend 50% of my time cajoling my GM to think about where the business should be in a few years' time. Okay. And the rest is on 65 people. So I do about no marketing in a kind of purest sense. But I think that's really good, because my aspirations, you know, in long term is not to be a marketing professional but to run organisations. So I think you base what you do on what you think you're going to need for the business as well. So it's horses for courses. Now, turning to innovation, we have a global innovation group, and we have about 8 people with titles of innovation in there in the local market. But ultimately, thinking ahead of the trend is everyone's job in marketing.
And when did this innovation group come about? Is this a recent thing, or have you had this for a while?
No, it's about a decade old. So Diageo started Diageo's a teenager. It's a 15-year-old business, so it's not very old as a group. And 10 years ago, it recognised the need to innovate, create products that are, you know, on trend, ahead of trend, whatever you want to call it. And that's where growth comes from. Most of Diageo's growth globally comes out of innovation now, as base kind of SKUs go through different life cycles. So the innovation group's been around for a decade. Their job is to ideate, create, produce and take to market new to world products or renovated products.
It does scare me, this question, because I struggle to remember what I did yesterday. It just tends to be something that every day is different, and the next day will be different as well. So for me, like the other guys, a lot of it's about just dealing with staff-related issues. In my role, about 50% of my role is in the domestic market, and the other 50% is the various markets that we export meat to, and that's mainly Asian markets and a few others. So there'll be a range of people-related issues and opportunities that I'll be dealing with on a daily basis. The second area would be execution. In our what many of you may not know what Meat and Livestock does, but effectively we're responsible for growing demand for red meat for the industry. So for us, one of the good things about that is we actually don't sell anything. So so for us, performance is about doing what we say we'll do. So for me, it's very much about ensuring that the team, wherever they are around the globe, are doing what they've committed to do. And so that's really about monitoring monitoring performance and discussing that and discussing issues that we've got coming up. And so a big part of my role then is challenging them and saying, well, look, are we doing this the right way? Are there some different ways we could do this? So, it's people, it's performance and plans, it's challenging, and then the various other things that come up. There's also a fair bit of stakeholder management. So there's various people who have a say in what we do and taking their feedback on board, reporting back to them.
I think a lot of people outside the industry assume that marketers do ads, and we do a lot of advertising depending on the business that you're in. But there's a saying which really comes out of industrial design, which is details aren't details, details end up making the design itself. And my really 2 KPIs, if I boil it down, is one about brand positioning in Australia and brand awareness offshore. And then the second one is selling 50,000 seats every day across our network. And I'd love to think it was as easy as running ads and all of that happens, but it's not. So then it comes down to the way our rest of our 30,000 people engage with the brand and what they're doing, from pilots to cabin crew to catering to our lounges to check-in, what does the boarding pass look like and so on. And probably my biggest challenge is most of those people don't report to me. I'm not responsible for cabin crew or pilot announcements or whether the pilot stands at the door and so on. And even uniforms is a big part of that, which actually marketing did drive the new uniform because that's such an important touch point. So a big part of my job is to hit those KPIs, is to make sure other parts of the business are aligned with our brand strategy, with our brand vision and with our values, and working with them to come up with what are they going to stop doing, start doing and keep doing to align with that. So how does catering, for example, deliver on a more contemporary brand in Australia? How does the uniform do that? How do the announcements, do we say, good evening ladies and gentlemen, which is kind of what news presenters would have said perhaps 15 years ago, or do we say hello everyone? And it's a lot of those subtleties in really working with the brand. I think another big one is probably stakeholder management on funding. We could spend $400 million on a new A380. We can put in new lounges. We can change the menu. There's a lot of things we can do to improve on the brand experience and to improve on those sales targets, travel agents, etc. Okay. So a lot of my job is really working with partners and coming up with the best options, and then really bidding and debating over funding as well. Obviously, people are a big part of it, and then the other big challenge is selling seats on the way out and selling seats on the way in. And that's obviously Asia, it's Europe and multiple languages and countries, so coordinating that piece. I think channel partners is probably the final. Tourism partners are trying to get people to their destinations, travel agents are trying to sell. We want to get a market share of what they're trying to do, so those partnerships are incredibly important for us too.
When you were all asked in your first question to describe your day and your role, none of you said managing an agency, and I don't know whether to be delighted or worried about that, but I thought managing that relationship would have been fairly high on the agenda.
The MDs of my kind of, or directors of client services, I would consider them my direct reports. Mm. So I have a span of control of about 8 people, and I assume that I tack on 3, which is my 3 agents, and I have whips with those 3 dudes, just like I have with my direct reports. Mm. So I assume that they're in my team, and I would represent their position as equal to anyone else on my team, and they're not treated like an agency. They're in the tent, right? They're employed by us. They're part of the group. So under people management, I don't even until you asked the question, I didn't even think about it as agency management. They're just people who work with us and for us inside the business. And I think once you've got that, there's a lot more candour and honesty like you would have with someone who is directly reporting to you. And so if you can get to that level of trust and relationship, it just flows more naturally than worrying about managing your agency. Otherwise you get to this master and command process when the worst thing that happens in agency relationships is this I say you do mentality. What needs to happen is agencies say you should, you go I will. And they need to have the confidence that they're so tight in, they can make the recommendations that are completely opposed to the current paradigms that you think, and feel that they will be accepted and considered without this master and command, I pay you mentality. And I think that's when you've got a much more seamless agency relationship.
My analogies, I mean, Kellogg's have been with Leo Burnett's for over 60 years, with JWT here in Asia Pac for I think 40 or 50 years. So these are enduring relationships which will long see my tenure and beyond. The analogy I would use is it's a bit like Tolstoy's War and Peace, a bit like marriage. You know, kind of like you go through your good times, you go through your low times. At the end of the day, you know, the relationship is enduring. Often the issues are related to, you know, individual people, you know, good and bad. And you know, when it's bad, then you know the casualty is often the person, you know, not the relationship. And I think you know that enables that relationship then to keep moving. I mean, in Battle Creek, in the headquarters of Kellogg's, you know, the chairman of Kellogg's is actually an ex-Leo Burnett's guy. So you know that. I mean, I've never come across that before. I mean, that's you know the intertwined relationship between you know agency and client is to that level is quite amazing. And I think you know I personally hate pitches. I think they're a complete drain on my time. And I think across my career I might have done maybe or been involved with 4 or 5, and I just hate the idea altogether.